Hello dear viewers. Have you ever witnessed a seemingly perfect wedding suddenly interrupted by a ghost from the past? When Diep walked into the church in her pure white wedding gown, did you think everything would go smoothly? Did James's emotional gaze as he sought his bride make your heart skip a beat? How would you react if the church doors suddenly burst open and a man shouted, "She is my wife"? Who is Paul, that mysterious man? Was he truly once married to Diep? What did James do to protect the woman he loves amid the shocked eyes of the guests? Were you surprised when Diep didn't flinch, but instead stepped forward, looked Paul in the eyes, and said, "We were never legally married"? In that moment, did you feel that the truth held more power than any justification? Do you believe Paul walking away in silence was the closing of an old chapter? And when James held Diep's hand and walked back to the altar with her, did you feel the strength of true love? If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next videos, where emotions and unexpected twists are always waiting for you. The church bells rang gently, echoing through the quiet morning air, signaling that a sacred moment was about to begin. The sunlight streamed softly through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the floor and bathing the chapel in a magical light. The entire space was adorned in pure white baby's breath flowers, silky ribbons wrapped around each wooden pew, and golden candles flickered like tiny stars. The soft melody of the organ blended seamlessly into the solemn atmosphere, heightening the emotion of the moment. Guests had already taken their seats. They whispered softly among themselves, eyes turned toward the altar, waiting in quiet anticipation. This was more than just a wedding, it was the fairy tale culmination of James and Diep's enduring love story, one that had weathered many storms to arrive at this day. James stood before the altar, his face unable to hide the deep emotion he felt. Dressed in a tailored navy suit, he looked calm and composed, yet his hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from overwhelming happiness. He leaned toward his best man and whispered, "I still can't believe this. She's really going to be my wife." The best man chuckled softly, patting his shoulder. "You're not dreaming, my friend. If you were, your heart wouldn't be pounding like that." Suddenly, all heads turned as the grand doors of the church began to open. The music shifted, and morning sunlight spilled in, forming a halo of light in the entrance. From that golden glow, Diep appeared, her arm resting on her father's. She walked slowly and gracefully down the aisle, radiant in a flowing white wedding gown. The hem of her dress drifted lightly with each step, and her bouquet of white flowers gleamed in her hands. Her gaze remained fixed on James, the man waiting for her with a smile that couldn't shine any brighter. James held his breath. In his mind, he could only think, "My God, she's like an angel." Diep returned his gaze, her expression calm yet brimming with emotion. She leaned slightly toward her father and whispered, "I've waited for this moment for so long." Her father gave a gentle nod, squeezing her hand with warmth. "I'm proud of you, Diep. Today, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." As she reached the altar, James stepped forward and extended his hand. Diep placed hers in his without hesitation. That simple touch said more than words ever could. It was a promise of trust, of love, and of a future together. Hand in hand, they walked toward the altar as their guests watched with teary eyes and warm smiles. The elderly priest, with a kind and gentle face, welcomed them with a deep, soothing voice. "Dear friends, Today we gather in this sacred place to witness something truly miraculous, the union of two souls who have found each other, who have chosen to walk life's path together in love and faith. James softly tightened his grip on Diep's hand and leaned in to whisper, "You've made my life something extraordinary." Diep smiled up at him, her eyes gleaming with serenity. "Thank you for waiting for me." The ceremony began. Their vows echoed softly through the solemn air. Everyone held their breath, hearts moved by the sincerity and tenderness unfolding before them. In that moment, the world seemed to pause, two lives, two stories, beginning anew as one. But no one knew, behind the very doors that had just welcomed love and light, the shadows of the past were stirring, ready to crash into their perfect day like a storm no one saw coming. As the priest began to recite the opening words of the wedding vows, the church fell into a sacred stillness. Everyone listened in quiet emotion, all eyes focused on the couple standing before the altar where love was about to be sanctified in a sacred covenant. But just then, at the very moment the priest was about to read the familiar line, "If anyone here objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace," bang! A loud, jarring noise shattered the solemn atmosphere. The grand doors of the church were kicked open with force, slamming against the walls with a thunderous echo. Everyone turned at once, stunned eyes fixed on the entrance. A man in a jet-black suit, hair slicked back, eyes burning with rage, stormed into the church. The sound of his shoes striking the stone floor echoed like hammer blows, each step anchoring itself into the room's frozen silence. His face was hard, angular, his gaze sharp and seething as it swept across the crowd. Pow! The name exploded in Diep's mind. Her hand instinctively tightened around James's. There was no mistaking him, the man who once belonged to a past she had no desire to revisit. He stopped midway down the aisle, under the weight of dozens of shocked and confused stares, and shouted, "This wedding has to stop. Diep is my wife." His voice thundered through the sanctuary like a bomb dropped into a tranquil lake. The guests murmured in disbelief. Some leaned toward each other in hushed whispers, others turned to Diep with puzzled expressions. Even the priest stood speechless, frozen mid-motion. The organ fell silent, stunned into stillness by the chaos. James wasted no time. Within a second, he stepped forward, firmly placing himself between Diep and the intruder. Gone was the gentleness in his eyes. Now, they were cold and sharp as steel. "You have no right to insult her. And you have no place here." A heavy silence fell over the church. No one dared to move, breathe, or blink. Time itself seemed to pause. Howe's eyes narrowed at James, his fury boiling over. He stepped closer, fists clenched, posture tense as if ready to strike. But James didn't budge. His gaze held firm. His hand subtly clenched at his side, sending a silent message, "I won't let anyone hurt her. Not again." Behind him, Diep held James's hand tightly, her chest rising and falling in deep breaths. But it wasn't fear. It was the surge of old memories, betrayal, pain and the liberating realization that the man standing before her now no longer had any power over her life. Whispers started spreading again through the pews. Some of the guests recognized Pao, those who knew fragments of Diep's past. Confusion danced across faces. Tension hovered thick in the air. Pao shifted his gaze toward Diep, over James's shoulder. His voice dripped with bitterness. "So it's that easy for you to forget, isn't it? The love, the time, everything I gave you. You think putting on a white dress erases everything?" Diep didn't respond. She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She simply took a quiet step forward, standing beside James, her back straight, her eyes calm and unwavering as they met Pao's. The silence she offered in return carried more weight than any justification ever could. The atmosphere in the church remained heavy after Pao's chaotic intrusion. Everyone held their breath, still processing what had just happened. The priest hadn't continued. James gently squeezed Diep's hand, his eyes asking if she was all right. She nodded quietly. Diep let go of James's hand, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. Not in a rush, not afraid. Each step was a declaration to herself that she was no longer afraid of the past, no longer bound by old memories. When she was only a few feet from Pao, she stopped. Her eyes, no longer timid, now held calm strength. Surrounded by hundreds of eyes, she spoke, not loudly, but clearly and firmly. "Pao, you're lying. We were never legally married. You know that better than anyone." A wave of murmurs rippled through the guests. Some stared in disbelief, others frowned in confusion. But most were stunned. Pao hadn't expected Diep to be so composed, so resolute. He stood frozen, his throat tight. His once fiery eyes flickered with uncertainty. He stammered. "But, we lived together. Yes, I once thought that was love. But I was wrong. It was dependency. It was fear of being alone. It was a wound I carried for far too long. And I've moved on." Diep spoke each word like she was cutting through the fog. There were no tears, only truth. She turned slightly, addressing the crowd that had gone completely silent. "I'm not ashamed of my past. But I will not let it hold back my future. I stand here today because I've chosen love and freedom, not a life imprisoned by someone who called himself my husband without any legal vows or true respect." No one doubted anymore. Her words cut through the confusion like sunlight through clouds. The image of a seemingly fragile woman standing in her own wedding, confronting the past and owning her truth, left everyone in awe. James stepped forward, quietly standing beside her. He didn't need to say anything. He just reached for her hand, a gesture filled with love, yes, but also with deep respect. Diep glanced at him and smiled softly, as though every lingering fear had just melted away. Pao remained where he stood, suddenly small and out of place. The arrogance he had carried in only minutes ago had completely vanished. His eyes searched Diep's face one last time, but there was nothing left for him to hold on to. Without another word, he turned and walked away. No one stopped him. No more explanations were needed. The church doors closed behind him, as if sealing off a long overdue ending. The tension in the church slowly lifted. The priest exhaled, a quiet smile forming on his lips. He nodded and said gently, "Then let us continue." James and Diep turned back to the altar, hand in hand. The organ resumed its gentle melody, warm and peaceful. The church bells rang once more, echoing through the space like a proclamation. True love had prevailed, and nothing could stand in its way.
Bạn có từng chứng kiến một lễ cưới tưởng chừng như hoàn hảo lại bị gián đoạn bởi quá khứ bất ngờ xuất hiện khi Diệp bước vào nhà thờ trong bộ váy cưới trắng tinh khôi. Bạn có nghĩ mọi chuyện suôn sẻ. Điều ánh mắt xúc động của James khi nhìn thấy cô dâu khiến bạn rung động. Bạn sẽ phản ứng thế nào nếu cánh cửa nhà thờ đột ngột mở và một người đàn ông hét lớn, "Cô ấy là vợ tôi"? Bao, người đàn ông đó là ai? Anh ta có thực sự là chồng cũ của Diệp không? James đã làm gì để bảo vệ người phụ nữ mà anh yêu? Trước ánh mắt nhìn hoang mang của mọi người, và bạn có bất ngờ khi Diệp không né tránh mà bước lên, nhìn thẳng vào mắt Bao và nói, "Chúng ta chưa từng đăng ký kết hôn." Lúc ấy, bạn cảm thấy có thật sự mạnh mẽ hơn bất cứ lời biện minh nào không? Chúng ta hãy đi cùng nhau tìm hiểu.